The first question I want to ask you: politics,
Fashion.
Sexuality.
religion, films, Nigeria, sports, music. Because of my career, just ask. Hi, it's Ask for Me, and it's another week. And I know I say it over and over again. I have sometimes guests that really, really excite me. And today I've got a guest that really, really excites me. Not for the reason you think. We'll talk about that later. But my guest this morning is actress, writer, stage performer, Ellie Kendrick. I'm not going to say much because we're going to say it later. Hi, Ellie.
Hello. How are you doing?
Good.
Looking very nice today.
Good. Okay, so let's get it out of the way. Let's get this
Okay.
out of the way very quickly. A confession. I've never seen Game of Thrones.
Oh, that's fine. And I'm really glad you got that out of the way, because normally when I'm ever doing an interview, all people ask me is if I can tell them what's going to happen, and they want to talk about their theories, which is fine, but it's kind of good that you haven't seen it, to be honest.
Because I don't know where to start from, because everybody I know, they just sort of like go, they think I'm uncool, they think I'm
Oh no, I
mad
think it's much cooler
because
not to
of
have watched
that.
it. I shouldn't say that.
And
but-
I was like, and I was like, well, I didn't catch on to it early enough, and by the time I caught on, there was so much to catch up to.
Yeah, you'd now have to spend 70
Didn't have
hours
to-
of your
exactly.
life.
So I'm trying to find 70 hours
Yeah.
to catch up. But then what I said to them eventually is that, well, I mean, now I've seen one episode, but I've got Mira
On your sofa.
on my sofa.
That's right.
So we'll get those ones out of the
Okay,
way.
great.
And then we'll come to the mates, as
Right,
I
great.
like to call it. But the first thing I was told to ask you about Game of Thrones was what's going to happen next week.
I mean, I couldn't even tell you because I only get given the scripts that I'm in.
Yeah.
And so I can't tell. I can't tell you, unfortunately. Did you hear
Yeah.
that? How nervous I was.
Yeah,
just
yeah.
then I standing. I can't tell you anything. No, but genuinely, actually, I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's always weird because you don't end up following it as much when you're in it.
Yeah.
Because if you're in it,
Do you
then-
watch it?
I find it very hard to watch stuff that I'm in, because once you've seen behind the curtain,
Yeah.
it's quite hard to believe in the dragons.
Yeah.
When you've seen someone waving a tennis ball around in front of a green screen, it
And there's a lot of that going on, isn't there?
Oh yeah. High moment of my career was being taught how to axe fight by a guy who played one of the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I got on set an axe fought with a group of men, skinny men in green lycra suits, who were going to be replaced by skeletons. And I thought, hey, this is a great job to have.
I'm going to come back to that. But you're talking about the things that you learn. I've read that you've learned all sorts of things.
Oh yeah.
From learning to skin a rabbit.
Yeah, I can skin a rabbit.
But you're vegan.
Yeah, this is before I was vegan, thankfully. Yeah, I now am. I get nervous. We were talking about labels a bit earlier, and I get nervous about telling people I am a vegan, because I certainly had a set of preconceptions about what that was before I was, and I definitely judged people who said that they were vegan. So now I feel like I have to really trust people before I can let them know.
Yes.
But yeah, the rabbits was pre that time, so thankfully I didn't have any difficulty
Yeah,
there.
so you know how to skin it. I mean, I'm Yoruba. You have to learn to skin stuff.
So can you skin stuff?
I can skin anything.
My mum can skin a whole deer.
Yeah, your mom takes the baking cake.
Yeah, she's my height, and she can skin a whole deer, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah. So you can sword fight
Yeah, a little bit.
a little bit. You can skin a rabbit.
Uh-huh.
What else can you
Milk
do?
a cow.
Oh, you can milk a cow.
I did a film where I had to milk cows. I could
Oh,
do
that was,
that.
I don't remember. Wasn't that the leveling?
Yeah,
yeah,
so remember, that was
leveling.
it. Milk a cow. I can Scottish dance. I had to learn that on a film I did in Scotland.
That was the whiskey one.
Yeah, whiskey galore. What else can I do? Shoot electricity out of my hands.
No.
According to the television, I can.
Wait, what is that?
I'm off duty right now, so I couldn't. In a show called Misfits, I had to do that.
Do you know, for a second, I believe that.
Yeah, it was really funny because we had to. Obviously, whenever you had special effects,
Yeah.
they're not there in front of you. So
Yeah.
I was playing a character who could shoot electricity off her hands, but all that I would do on set was just do this.
Yeah.
And everyone would just stare at me doing that,
Yeah.
and then it gets replaced with computer.
But then you
graphics
did
later.
learn to do some stunts, didn't you?
Yeah,
yourself?
I can do some stunts.
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
What sort of stunts can you do?
Well, I mean, many different kinds. I've had to die a lot, do different kinds of dramatic death. I can do some kinds of fighting. And yeah, I just kind of anything really that I really enjoy being given a physical challenge on a film set or a TV set, because so often you're just sitting around
Yeah.
and getting the chance to do something really active and choreographed like a fight sequence is really fun.
But that's the interesting thing about your career. I mean, I've read you've been acting since you were like 12 or something.
Yeah, 12 or 13.
12 or 13.
Yeah, so like over half my life.
And you've done so. It's so wide for someone so young, from Anne Frank to upstairs downstairs.
Yeah,
to,
you've done your
done
research.
You've done everything. You've
Yeah.
done everything. I'm like, so much, but it's the breadth that I find fascinating. So from something like the Game of Thrones to Leveling to you do dark comedies, you do action, you've done romance. Romeo and Juliet wasn't it?
Yeah.
So you've done all of that. How did you know to do all of this so young? Usually people just get stuck.
Well, it's been kind of my life's mission so far not to get stuck. So I've been always quite as careful as I can to make sure that I haven't been pigeonholed. So whenever I choose a job, I think very carefully about what it will mean for my future career, I suppose, because there's always a temptation to keep taking the same kind of roles that are offered you, because casting directors come to you and go, oh, this is the girl who can do that.
Yeah.
And we were talking a bit earlier about getting kind of pigeonholed and labels and that kind of thing. And I always get nervous about that. And for me, the most exciting thing about acting is getting the chance to play someone who's completely different to myself and explore what a completely different mind might be, what it might be to live in a body that moves in a completely different way. And so if I were always to do the same thing, I'd get bored. Mm-hmm. So for me, acting is kind of shape-shifting. It's about inhabiting completely different characters, and that's what I love about it. So I would get bored if I was just doing the same thing over and over
again. How
did
you know that so early? I mean, you must have, because that variety of work, of choice of work, started quite early. So I'm thinking, but you were a kid. Your mates were, what were they doing? Your mates were probably doing, that was before Hannah Montana. You're older than Hannah Montana, because I was the Hannah Montana generation.
Yeah.
And so I was like, that's what the other kids were doing. So how did you know so early?
I think it was a combination of things, but a lot of it was chance, because I've never been a super conventional character, so I was never going to get cast in those kind of roles. Mm-hmm. The way that I present myself, or the way that I, think or act, isn't necessarily, stereotypical blonde romantic lead kind of character. So I was never called up to do those kind of roles, and kind of thank God, because the roles that I get, offered are I think much more interesting. Not to say that there aren't leading, romantic roles, which can be really exciting and challenging, but so often for women that's not the case.
Isn't that crazy though? I mean, you look like the kind of woman that I would, not me. Well, I'm not that sure. I don't. You why wouldn't you be a romantic lead? Why? Why is it the same type? I mean, in Nigeria, where I come from, it's always the yellow skinny girl. That's the lighter skin girl. Yeah. I mean, there's a look. So there's also a look in Hollywood and Britain. I see is a blonde, slim. There's nothing wrong with that. But
no.
Why don't we have lead romantic characters that look like you?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, there could be, but I think a lot of it is. I think maybe it starts with money and the way that we sell things and package things. If there is people know that a certain kind of image on a poster sells the film.
Yeah.
Right, and so for those big budget kind of Hollywood movies, a lot of the time people aren't necessarily as imaginative. They can be, but they think this is a formula which is sold, so let's just do that again and again and again. And so I think the money creates a pressure on creativity that means that sometimes people aren't able to think a bit more imaginatively about the sort of work that they might be able to make and the kind of people they might be able to work with. And it's something that you're always coming up against.
Would it be different if there were more women, if there lots more stories written by women and being directed by women?
100%. Yeah. I mean, that is the answer.
Because I thought
it's like get women, but also you need to have women on, as executive producers, somehow, have women at the top who are making the decisions about funding, about casting, all of that stuff, so that as well as, the directors and the writers, there are people who are, the people who are providing the money for these projects as well, aren't a bunch of white dudes in a room, saying they want the blonde, blonde pretty girl.
Because So let's part back a bit to Game of Thrones because
Yeah.
they won't let me get away
Okay.
from not asking the questions there. When I was talking with other people, I said, make me understand Game of Thrones beyond, the books and all of that. And I was talking about your character in particular, and they were like, oh, she takes care of her brother. Her brother has a disability. She's a huntress, and so on and so forth. It's not so much. She just takes care of him. And I'm like, yeah, but I've read the backstory of that character, losing the parents, and all of that. So how do you become, talking about getting into the skin, the movements, the persona, the mind of the character? How do you become Mira?
Good question. I think, well, for that I kind of researched and that I read the books, and I read her sections in the books and how she was described as, moving and being, and kind of started from there. And I just, I suppose you just have to imagine what it's like for this woman, her body is very important. It's the thing that, her physical ability is the thing that is going to keep everyone alive. The fact that she can hunt and that she can protect, the men actually in that story, and, that she has to be kind of drag this huge sled. Her body is really, really important to her. So she has a confidence in her body. And I kind of start from that, because as soon as you think about how the body is held, that affects the way that the words are spoken and, the rhythm of the speech. So on one side, I will look at, and I do this kind of with every role, I'll look at the physicality of them. And on the other side, I'll pay really close attention to the way that the sentences are written. The actual words on the page are presented to me, because it's like a series of clues. You feel like a detective sometimes when you're approaching a role. You think, how can I, what are the, who are they? Where have they come from? How can I look at the information that has been provided to me and track down this person for me to kind of become?
Yeah.
So, I'll start with the physicality on one side, and then I'll look at the way that the sentences, the kind of language that they use, and the way that the sentences are structured, and kind of try and find a rhythm and a pitch for that character, and sort of go from there, really.
Who do you like on the set and who don't you like? I get to the bottom of the matter. Not everybody. People always say, oh, we work so well together. I'm like, yeah, I've been on those sets. Tell me who is we call them yeye person in Nigeria.
What's that mean?
Yeye. So that's what is a good word to replace yeye? What is the annoying person? And that's just saying it nicely. That's just
the annoying
nice.
person. To be honest, because it's a funny set, because as the part that I play, I kind of go in and out of the set. So I'm probably an annoying person, because there's a huge cast and crew whose names you can never remember everyone's names, because you go in for 3 days or 4 days, and it's always really important to me to try and be as much of a community as possible in the film or the television show or the play that you're making. But on that show, it's impossible. You can't meet everyone, and because people don't have the time, and there are so many people you could never remember their names. So maybe I'm that person, because I'm the person who comes in and is like, oh, hello, how are you? Yeah. What's their name again? Which is awful, because I hate being that person. So maybe that's me. But in terms of the characters that my kind of Mira Reid kind of hangs out with, she only really interacts with the kind of the same group, and we actually get on really well. So yeah.
And there's a lot of nudity.
Yeah,
well,
there is.
In the first few ones.
Yeah.
So I've read all this. It's more like I saw it, and I saw something where you wrote, where you were quoted as saying you were glad that at least your first ones was not going to be nudity and all of that. Do you have problems with nudity on
I
show?
think it's very hard to get nudity in general right. So in terms of my own personal choices, I would think very, very carefully about being asked. As a woman in this industry, I think very carefully about being asked to be nude in anything, because, we're already every day from the moment we wake up battling being objectified as women in the world anyway. So to then do that, for me personally, to do that on screen would require something really important and a story that could only be told in that way.
Yeah.
So for me, I wouldn't do it unless I felt it was absolutely necessary, and I've never read a role that I've been offered or been asked to meet for where I felt it was absolutely necessary. So there are things that I say, no, I won't audition for that, because that character has to get naked, and I don't understand why, or I don't like what it's saying in that way. But that's not to say that if I didn't, that if I read something perfect where she was also naked and she had to be naked, then I wouldn't do it. I would definitely consider it.
So let's talk about education and all of that. Yeah, posh kid. So being Nigerian and being a Nigerian parent, I'm coming to we aspire to give our children British education. You see me rolling my eyes because, well, I've stopped aspiring it.
Yeah.
And so, and so it was what Nigerians do is send their children, if they can afford it, to, you call them public schools here.
Yeah.
They are called private schools in Nigeria. And so you went to one, a very famous one, Benedin you went to. And that was where you started acting from. Did you like Benedin? Did you like being posh?
Right. Lots of questions. I think that it's something which I didn't understand at the time what I was getting myself in for. I think I would now say that I disagree with the public school system, and I think it perpetuates a kind of privilege which is really damaging to this country, and the arts and culture in general, as well as the rest of society. I owe that school a lot of stuff, including the fact that it was an all-girls school and I played all the boys' parts in all the plays, and that's what made me love acting, being outside of myself, being someone different. But I definitely wouldn't say that poshness was something I aspired to. I think it's something I'm suspicious of. And I think I understand why there was a resistance to our British media's obsession with poshness and with public school, and the way that people from public school and Oxbridge, of which I...
Yeah, also Oxbridge, Cambridge.
Yeah, exactly.
By Nigerian standard, by Nigerian parent standard, you are the perfect offspring of the Nigerian parents. Right. You just need the right colour.
Yeah, and that was one of the things, the school that I went to at the time, it was pretty much, it was like 80% white girls, maybe there were some people from China and Japan, maybe it was like 85% women who, were light-skinned, and there was definitely no idea of a world that was outside of that. There was no awareness.
Yeah.
We weren't taught about like feminism. We weren't taught about race politics. Things that we weren't given Audre Lorde. We weren't, which I think every teenage girl should be.
Yeah.
So there were. I grew up in a system of privilege, of which some of the things I've been very lucky to have had in my career, but I'm very aware now that how convenient that I'm only aware afterwards. But I'm aware now that it's not a system that I agree with, and not one that I would seek to send my child.
So people say that's very much so. That same system sort of controls the creative arts industry in the UK. That the whole of the film industry, advertising, film, all of that a lot of it also comes from Oxbridge and public school system.
Yeah, I think that by privileging one kind of voice and one form of like speech or rhetoric or language or one form of appearance, we're so much poorer as a country in terms of our culture and our society, because we're only getting one viewpoint. I mean, you see it I think that in my industry, for example, in the creative industries, you get a much broader variation of story. You get more interesting television. You get more interesting, film, better scripts, better actors. If the doors were open to...
Wider,
yeah. I mean, it's just, obviously it would happen.
I'm fascinated by the fact that you're not on social media. Because usually social media is a good way to track my guests down. I found nothing on you.
Yeah, I like that. I like being visible.
I like that to myself.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh God, I'm jealous of that. But then this is the kind of work. So there's a lot of conversations going on. And I'm not sure those conversations are bringing us together. They seem to be balkanizing.
A conversation is, a discussion between a group of people. But what happens on Twitter is not real conversation, because you have the people who are having the discussion via their, chopped up, 140 characters?
Yes, 140
I don't even know how many characters it is. So you have the people who are having their discussion via their 140 characters, but you also have all of the onlookers, which is the whole of the global community, who don't have to be a part of the conversation, but can look at it, can watch it, and can disagree, and can rip that person and their opinion down to shreds, or take it out of context, repost it, and say, look at what an idiot this person is. And that's what really scares me about social media, is this urge to poke holes and to find how people are wrong, without any kind of equal exchange. Those people aren't putting themselves out on what they aren't having honest conversations. They're sort of seeking to broadcast and to kind of denigrate. They're not seeking to... But look, that's actually... I feel like maybe I'm being a bit unfair. I think that there are some amazing conversations on Twitter. So I don't have a Twitter account, but occasionally I will go invisibly go on Twitter.
You're one of the spies.
Yeah, exactly. I'm one of the people who I just criticised. Although having said that, I don't get involved in saying people are right or wrong. But there have been conversations, which are conversations which could never have happened anywhere else. And I'm thinking specifically about a lot of. So I don't know if do you know of the kind of artist and theatre maker Selena Thompson?
No.
She's really brilliant. You should look her up. So people like that, she has a really interesting take on the world. She has views which hadn't occurred to me, and she has enriched the way that I see kind of the world. So having someone like her on Twitter, being able to represent herself and being able to speak out of a hole which isn't provided to her anywhere else in the world, is really interesting and valuable. So I just get scared that if I were on Twitter, I would not be able to do that. Yeah. I get scared of the way in which people are, torn down really quickly. I get scared of the reduction that is required for your 140 characters. As you can tell, I speak quite a lot, quite fast, and I don't know how I could boil that down to, that tiny message. But also, I want to have real life conversations, and I find that, a lot of my friends who are amazing on Twitter, sometimes when it comes to real life, they don't have the time or the space to have that kind of chat because they're, online doing it with a stranger.
Yeah. Why are women paid so much lower than men in the creative arts? It was in all industries.
I mean, we live in a system that is deeply unequal right now, and there is no better numerical proof of the disparity in pay between genders across the field.
Yeah, you have the situation now where male leads or male actors are taking pay cuts, just to be a bit...
Which of course is great for the film producers because they're fantastic.
But it shouldn't be that way. And why is it that way? Aside from the usual, women are just positioned that way. Is there something else we're missing?
I think it's never about just... with any of these situations, it's never just about the end result. It's about the structures behind the structures that have supported the whole scaffolding of this event. And so their agents will have negotiated a fee for them, and that fee will be based on past fees, which will be based on other people who had certain views about, how present a male presenter should be in the show, so maybe they'll get more money. So it's not just about that woman is getting paid less than that man. It's about the way we as a society view women's place in employment, but also kind of as human beings, they're afforded less space, and so they get fewer jobs, or they get fewer promotions. So the men end up often getting more promotions, getting more airtime, getting more space, getting paid more. That perpetuates. So the agent of the man can say, well, he's got paid this on this last job. Why shouldn't he get paid this again? Whereas the woman's agent can't say that. She can say, I'm going to try as hard as I can to get my client the best pay, but I can't say, exactly. So it's about a history that it's always about the causality, the chain of causality that's very difficult to unpick.
I want to talk about money and art.
Okay, interesting. Go on then.
There's also that, whether it's writing or dance or any kinds of performance, there is a school of thought that says, that commerce and high art can never mix. And there's also, from country to country, it differs. So the big bad wolf in this whole business is America, definitely. And, America and money, and, that, the films they're just big, films that are designed to make money. TV industries, all the shows that they do are just big to, they're not beautiful French films.
Right, yeah.
Or beautiful Italian films. Or even Iranian, those perfectly made Iranian films. Same thing with the TV shows. That it seems, and if you brought it down to individuals, it's like people would say, why are you taking that job? Why are you taking that role? You're only taking it because it's a big blockbuster. You need to be doing other forms of, that is this idea of the starving artist, really. Does money matter to you in looking at jobs that you take?
Well,
where's the role of money? Because we're talking about pay now.
Yeah. We've all got to pay our rent, so it would be foolish to say, oh, money doesn't matter to me at all, because we live in a capitalist system and we live in a system in which we need to pay our bills. So of course money matters. I suppose there's a constant navigation, like as an artist or as an actor or writer or whatever, which you have to be aware of in between the money, the jobs that pay the bills and the jobs that give you artistic nourishment. And sometimes the two collide, and that's amazing. But most of the time, they don't.
You don't,
And you have to think strategically and carefully, and you're not always afforded the opportunity to hop between the two. But I think this division between money in the arts, the arts are a huge industry that are incredibly lucrative, not only in terms of making profit for individuals, but in terms of tax returns and all of that stuff. But also as I think we're still struggling to find a way of talking about the arts outside of money, because we think so much about profit making. We think that that's a marker of value, whereas it's much harder to talk about the happiness that films can bring, or television or theatre, or the sense of community that they can provide. And because we don't have a way of quantifying that, because that's why it's so wonderful, because it's by its nature unquantifiable. It's very hard to make the indie film get the big bucks, because, or the whatever, the thing which you think is deeply beautiful and deeply poetic. It's hard to get that funded, because people go, well, how can I make money out of it? And it's more difficult to try and express the value that
Doesn't the class system permeate the creative industries in such a way that it then becomes, polarizing? And I'll give you examples. That's why comedic actors, for example, will be considered, even though they may earn more money, because maybe, they will just not be considered as great, artistic individuals or artists as maybe a great theatre performer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it's like Jim Carrey.
In it. Right.
When you're thinking of the
I think
greatest,
he's a great performer.
I think so too. But ordinarily, when you're thinking great performers, you're thinking Jeremy Irons. You're thinking.
And that's not what comes into my head.
Who was, I love this.
I know what you mean.
You're thinking that. And I've always thought, isn't that some sort of classism?
Yeah.
That permeates, and women are really suffer. It's like a comedic actress, is not giving her just dues.
That's interesting.
As much as maybe a dramatic.
But I think that there's not necessarily always a division between the two. Like, you're seeing it more and more now that people are able to cross in between genres.
Yeah.
So thinking about someone like do you know the actress or actor, however she likes to be called, Tamsin Greig?
Yes.
Right. So she started as a comedy actor in Green Wing and kind of comedy shows, very funny, and then she segued into being a dramatic actor, and now she kind of does both. And I remember meeting her when she played my mum in Anne Frank, The Diary of Anne Frank, and I'd only seen her doing comedy, and I was like, how interesting, she's been cast as this role. And she was great in it. Yeah. And, there's always that assumption, if we see someone doing comedy, that's all they can do. But, I don't know, I think there's more fluidity between, comedy and, drama and all that stuff now than there has been. But I think that the class thing, definitely exists in this industry.
Isn't that one of the reasons why British actors are in high demand in America? Because, there's that sense that, they got the theatre training, they got proper training, and they like British accents. So I'm like, is that not the only reason, but is that one of the reasons? Because they are. Yeah. Quite a number of...
Yeah, it's a very different time to be an actor now than it was, 50 years ago, in that now, I think because of globalization and because of the way that technology works and all that stuff, it's much easier for British actors to work in America, and indeed a lot of British actors do go over to LA and work out there and have a great time. It's not something that I was going to say,
is that your next move?
For now, it's not something I can see happening, because I love living in London. I love the community that I'm a part of here. The artistic community and the community of friends I have. Part of the joy of being an actor and a writer and working in the creative industries is that you never know where you're going to be next. Yes. So who knows? Yes. I might be Skyping you from LA, in 3 months, but it's not something that is part of my plan, my master plan.
Like in that sense, okay, yeah. Well, no LA immediately in that sense. So if we're not going to LA, I have to ask you this question: Have you ever seen a Nollywood film? Do you know Nollywood film?
I know of Nollywood, but I've never actually watched a Nollywood film.
You have to watch a Nollywood film, because I was going to ask if you've ever seen any. But what have you heard about Nollywood industry generally?
I haven't heard very much at all. I mean, I know that they are incredibly popular, Nollywood films. People follow them religiously. Yeah. But to be honest, I don't know. And can you tell me a little bit more about them?
We're very prolific.
Yeah.
I can say that.
Yeah.
Very prolific. So a lot of movies being turned out, and it was a result of the film industry falling apart when we had the military dictatorship, and of course it's coming back up into more more cinematic experience. So it's growing, and I know it. So I would like to see somebody else's, particularly as an actor, for you to see what Nollywood is like in that regard.
The little that I know of it is quite heightened, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is heightened.
Yeah. So it's a very different style to
yeah.
like the maybe whatever a British movie might be. Called.
So aside from what are the others that you like in terms of films? I'll define that better. So if you don't know Nollywood, you already know American films. What outside genre or nationality of films have you found that's fascinating?
There's a filmmaker called Celine Sciamma. She's made films which are called, in the UK they're called Water Lilies, Tomboy and Girlhood, and they are three of my favourite films. She's a French filmmaker. She makes a lot of films about kind of women coming of age sort of stories, but in just a really interesting and nuanced way. And she's probably one of my very favourite filmmakers. So I really like her. And just I enjoy films that take the time to really dig deep into a person's life. I mean, I love those kind of big epic films have their place within culture, but the things that really get me going are films that spend time in just kind of one person's shoes or a small community shoes or a small family and observe them with kind of minute detail. Right. I think that's something that film can do, which is really exciting, which is bring us very intimately into a life that we might not identify with or we might not understand, and allow us to just to spend time in that world and see what it's like to view the world from a completely different perspective.
How do you handle criticism?
It depends where it's coming from, and it depends the environment in which it's coming. I quite like getting criticism, if it's constructive. I think.
How do you determine what's true?
If someone is telling me something, if I'm having a conversation about how I can improve what I'm doing, then someone being critical is useful. If it is, a review where someone just says, "This is rubbish," she's really bad. I'm like, well, what do I do with that? That's not, I purposefully don't read reviews of stuff until, after it's been done, after the job is finished. A lot of people don't read reviews at all, but sometimes I get too curious, so I think I'll read it. But it never makes you happy. There's never been a review that I've read where I thought, perfect. That was exactly everything that I wanted it to be. Of course, it's very hard to resist reading it, but then it's never the thing that you want it to be. So reviews are funny things. But in terms of criticism, personal criticism on my work from people who I respect, I welcome it because I think it's important to be questioned.
So I've got a question that I think you would be the best person to help me answer this question. And the question is, what do you think about intellect versus intuition?
Very good question. Intellect versus intuition. It's a really interesting question because obviously so much of acting, what you're doing is trying to intuit. It's trying to kind of bypass what's going on in your head, and overthinking things and just being able to portray a feeling. I'm really interested in, I obviously am naturally, I'm very interested in literature. I'm very interested in working with texts. I've come from a kind of a training which was, a lot of it was about kind of examining works of literature and seeing and trying to unpick them, and that definitely informs my practice as like an actor and a writer. But it can be dangerous and damaging to ever consider yourself an intellectual or ever to privilege the intellectual over the intuitive. I think, again, I always refer to her, but there's an Audre Lorde essay about the power of the erotic, and she talks about, I'm probably paraphrasing it all wrong, but she talks about a creative power that comes from within us, that we project outwards, and that's where kind of true creativity comes from, right? It's a kind of intuitive central force that comes from the inside out, and it's unmistakable, that force. You can tell when you see an amazing performance, or when you read a beautiful poem, or when you see it, when you see a piece of dance that's deeply felt, you can just feel it. It's just something intuitive and natural, and it's something that you can never reach via intellect. So I think that's a really important part of it. But then I suppose intellect. It's a
Isn't
even
it labeling? And
yeah.
isn't it just deliberately, once again, polarizing?
Yeah.
Because are they not interwoven? Because
Yeah.
I've also read that, there's a science to intuition itself.
For sure.
So intellect, because, oh God, I hate intellectualism. Let me put that correctly. I love intelligence and I love intelligent beings. But I have come to I have become suspicious of intellectualism.
Yeah.
That is performance of intellect or performance of knowledge instead of knowledge as wisdom or as an applied art form. So I think that a lot of this dichotomy comes from those polarizations where it's like, oh, intellect, is reason and intuition is unreasonable.
Yeah.
So you get to ask me one question.
Yes.
One question, any question.
There are lots of questions I'd like to ask you, but I think a question, we've already sort of touched on it, but I wanted to ask you about, because we talked a lot about the negative aspects of kind of social media, and I wanted to ask you what the value of social media is for you, and in terms of your voice and the views which you project on social media. I wanted to ask you, imagining that I was someone who came to you and said, convince me that I need to get social media. What would you say?
That's a really good question. Nobody's asked me that before, and mine there's a history to mine. So I started the high point of my career in Nigeria was a daily television breakfast show, and you know what breakfast shows are like, and particularly in a place like Nigeria, and I chose the national government-owned network, which is the equivalent of the BBC. So if you thought that. So it's like the BBC 50 years ago. And so a lot of my views, a lot of my ideas could not be put forward because there was a lot of censorship. There was censorship about who you could bring on, who you could talk to, how you could talk to them, what you wore. I used to carry a nipple pad around because if they put the camera on and they could see, I would be covered from neck to, but if they could see even an imprint,
wow,
the show is not on. So I always carried an extra one
dangerous
and an extra
nipples.
scarf, just there were all sorts of, so, and I felt really stifled.
Yeah.
But I also felt that it was important that I kept doing the show because it was a show everybody in the country saw, regardless of their class. So when the internet became a thing, it became the place where I went to say the things that I couldn't say on national television. So it was it freed my voice. It freed my personality. So that's what I would agree with you that there's a big element of that. And a lot of the editing that was done, they would take out some really good parts. We would have to take out some really good parts. So we had two cuts. So we had the broadcast cuts, and we had what we used to call the sexy ones. And so we would put them online.
Yeah.
And so I started putting the videos online. Then I started blogging, and then from blogging to Twitter, and all of that. So social media became a freeing voice for me. So I would say that for me, it's been really useful. It's also come with a big price. I stopped blogging because I didn't understand trolls at the beginning, and I got a lot of attacks. You can imagine the kind of views I was putting forward. I got a lot, and I felt physically threatened. I also had stalkers, and I remember when I called the police. And Nigeria is very interesting. I am known in Nigeria. You can call the Inspector General. You can call anybody and say, "Oga, I have this problem." So I called somebody really high up and said, "I am being stalked." And I gave details, and he said, "The man just likes you. We all like you."
Wow, yeah, it's a compliment.
I thought, it's a compliment, but this guy sounds really, really dangerous.
Yeah.
So it was a double-edged sword. But with time, I learned how to manage it better. I also found it really freeing because it freed me of my fear of other people's opinions. Because I got attacked long and often enough to get used to it.
But isn't that awful that that's the way it has to happen?
It's awful.
So you have to get attacked so much that you develop a tough skin.
Of course, people say to me all the time, "Oh, you're so strong." I'm like, the question you need to ask is why I've had to be so strong. I would not have preferred to be that strong.
Yeah.
I would have preferred to be a little more at ease.
Yeah, and shouldn't we all be able to be more gentle and more vulnerable and more open with each other? Like that's the thing that I find social media is often, it shuts down that like gentleness and openness and softness is almost impossible to to create within that sphere where everyone's kind of...
So
Yeah.
that's why my social media voice has changed. I say to people now that I've become like nature, connected but not involved.
Right.
That's what I say, because I
Yeah.
pick my battles. I look for spaces where I can be nuanced, and if I can't be nuanced, I'm just watching or laughing, and I'm trying to put forward things that I find personally, just more, I won't say uplifting or anything like that, but something that's more true to us as human beings, something that's kinder to us as human beings.
Yeah,
So.
and how, I guess, the mission for kindness on social media is, I think, one that we all need to be crusading, for right now. I think.
I wrote a big old thesis about kind media. That I wanted us to move the media, particularly news, to kind news. And everybody thought I was crazy, because I said that's where we have to go. So we're not performing knowledge. A lot of news is about people, either the anchors or the networks, or everybody has a pre-narrative and everybody's performing. I think we have to change. And my own term for it is actually we have to move towards kind media. But once you use that word kind, people perceive it as weak.
Oh, but I think, I think kindness can be deeply radical. It can be, there's something so powerful in kindness and vulnerability, which I think terrifies people.
Yeah.
But it's, because it is dangerous.
Yeah.
It can be dangerous. But I don't think true kindness is ever weak. I think it's deeply courageous.
Thank you. I feel validated. Thank you, Ellie.
Thank you very much.
I hope I see you again soon. I certainly will have to see you on Game of Thrones, because I need to find 70 hours of my life to catch up. And I want to say thank you to you for letting me have this time with you.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. It's been fantastic. I've loved it.
And when you do move to LA, promise me that I can come to any of your premiere.
Oh, yeah, for
as
sure.
your plus one.
Absolutely.
Just so I can wear a beautiful dress. That's all.
Fantastic.
Because at the end of the day, I'm a Yoruba woman, and we are never knowingly underdressed.
Fantastic.
And that's my conversation with Ellie Kendrick. I hope you've enjoyed it like I have. I'll see you again next week. Send me more questions on Ask For Me. Bye now.